Rightio, today we're going to be chatting about the New Balance SC Elite V5, which is a bit of an overhaul from them, taking this from more of a kind of heavy super trainer into a more serious racing shoe platform. Going to chat through this top to bottom today, chat about the price, and then get into a few comparisons as well, help you understand exactly what this shoe is about and what it feels similar to. Start off with some specs here. We've got 40mm of foam in the heel, an 8mm drop down to 32 in the forefoot. They're using a pretty standard PEBA foam here, their fuel cell compound. I would suggest that it feels quite resilient to the touch, but on the run it is more of a kind of soft compressive foam. Altogether, weight-wise, we're looking at about 225 grams in my men's size 10.5. With a fair few cut downs to the midsole, this is dropping about 40 grams for my size from the SC Elite V4. In terms of the upper here, this is definitely more of a comfortable training-focused upper. You can see a little bit more padding in and around the heel counter, fair bit more structure than you would expect from the standard super shoe. The lacing eyelet chain does a really good job of collecting the midfoot material and giving quite a strong lockdown through there. Tongue is gusseted on both sides and has a lace loop hole here, stays in position really nicely. The upper mesh feels very similar to something like the DV8 Nitro Elite 3, quite a strong material, doesn't overstretch and isn't super duper flexible, does have a bit of structure to it, and so I find the lockdown to be quite secure all the way through the shoe. The fit, I would say, is quite a standard super shoe last, bit of a squeeze through the heel and midfoot, which opens up into the forefoot with a bit more volume through there, a little bit more of a roomy toe box, I would say. I'm not going to say that this is a wide foot friendly shoe, but I do think this is on the more accommodating side of super shoes right now. I've gone size 10.5 here, that's worked really nicely, a little bit of room ahead of the toes and plenty of space on the outside edge for the pinkies to breathe. Overall for me, this has been a nice enough upper. It is certainly more comfortable. Is it as aggressive as I would like to see on a true racing shoe? Probably not, but I do accept that there are people who want a bit more comfort from their racing shoe if they're going to spend a bit more time in it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. Not really any notes to give. Moving down to the midsole, they have done a bit of an overhaul here with the midsole platform, trimmed up a lot of foam through the midfoot and heel, given it a bit more of an aggressive, snappy geometry up front, a bit more plate stiffness, and the overall ride experience here is more suited to actual racing. Half marathon pace, I think, feel a lot more competitive now, a bit more propulsive, a bit more kind of punchy, and I actually feel like I'm not missing out compared to other brands. The old SC Elite V4 was just not a competitive racing shoe, whatever way you looked at it. Sure, it was comfortable, sure, people enjoyed it because it was more accommodating, but at the end of the day, they were marketing it to break records, and it was just not going to be doing that. The Super Blast 2 felt faster than the SC Elite V4. This shoe is a massive upgrade over that. This does feel like it's sitting in and amongst the ranks of other racing shoes on the market. Is this jumping straight to the top of the super shoe conversation? Absolutely not. This is a back of the pack racing shoe for me. More of a kind of comfortable, smooth, simple geometry, something which I'm happy to use for kind of marathon pace intervals, bit of tempo and threshold stuff, but certainly doesn't have the pace of stuff like an Alpha Fly or a Wave Rebellion Pro or the new shoes like the Metaspeed Tokyos and the Fast R3. Nowhere close to that. But I do think that this is getting into that kind of back end of the conversation. And I think if you are just a New Balance fan, this is going to be a shoe where you're not missing out by a whole lot. For me, I found that the weakness of this shoe was 5 and 10K paces. I think that the softness of the foam kind of counteracted the aggression through the forefoot, which I thought I was going to enjoy a fair bit more. The stiffness of the plate was quite good in the early stages of my testing, but as I pushed it up towards 55 and now 60Ks, I found that it kind of flexed up a little bit and became a bit more mellow, and I wasn't really getting that kind of punch and flick off the front of the shoe that I was really enjoying in the early stages. For me, if I was going to race in this shoe, it would definitely be half or full marathon. I probably wouldn't be considering it against some other options, but if I was put in it, I wouldn't be too disappointed. To me, this feels like a bit of a blend between something like the Adios Pro 4 with the softness of the foam and the old Vaporfly 3 platform. A little bit more of a simple geometry, quite straightforward. You do get a bit of that kind of pitching of the carbon plate through the heel, which I think gives you a little bit more of a kind of quick transition through, get up onto the forefoot. You can feel the road a little bit more, feel a little bit more in control of your stride, but you do still get that kind of nice, soft, smooth protection. I'm not sure that combination works as well, as I said, like at the 5 and 10K pace, but sitting back at half and full marathon, I think it is quite a natural, smooth feeling super shoe with no real bells and whistles, which I think will still be appealing to a fair few people out there. In terms of the stability here, bit of an interesting one. Usually, if you see that the midsole has been trimmed up through the midfoot and heel, you would suggest that it is going to be more unstable, more ability to kind of collapse off it. But honestly, on the run and with my conversations with customers and a few other people out there, I haven't actually heard many reports that it's as unstable as you would expect. I think that comes down to the pitching of the carbon plate, the kind of sharp angle that it has through the heel here, which I think does transition you through quite quickly. The foam has enough resilience, I think, to hold on, and I think that the heel counter lockdown does help to kind of keep you focused on the midsole platform without falling off too easily. Sure, it's not going to be as stable as a Super Trainer or the old SC Elite V4, but I don't think it's an abomination. I don't think it's going to snap your ankles. I think if you have a reasonable level of ankle strength, this should be decent enough, but yeah, it is definitely less stable than the outgoing model. Overall for me, I'm a pretty big fan of the changes that New Balance have made here. I think that this is finally a competitive racing shoe, and it does actually live up to the marketing around record breaking and running fast, which just weren't true for the SC Elite V4, whichever way you want to spin it. Whether or not that's a betrayal of the audience of the old shoe is up for debate. I personally think that they should have brought this out with an update to the SC Trainer V3, which has been lacking for a long time now. They should have brought that out with a new foam, make that into a kind of replacement for the SC Elite V4, something that people can use for their kind of longer training runs, getting into racing with a bit more confidence and a bit more kind of fun factor to it. And then you could have this shoe sitting above it as a bit more of a serious racing option, which I think a fair few people would still jump onto, but then they have the fallback of the SC Trainer. I'm not sure bringing it out alone is the best way to go about it, but yeah, here we are. Hopefully the Trainer will be updated pretty soon. Moving down to the outsole, we've got fairly aggressive tread up here in the forefoot. There's kind of aggressive diamonds there. That's worked really nicely on a variety of surfaces for me. I've taken it on some dirt roads, some rough gravel, and some wet city paths, and it's held up really, really nicely. And the durability so far, I think, has been quite nice. I am seeing a bit of fraying to the outside edge, the kind of nubs there, but the actual base layer of rubber is well protected. And I think I should get some fairly good Ks out of this one, as long as the midsole holds up. I'm not so certain about these heel pods. I do know that is a bit of a kind of risky move to make. I know some people absolutely demolish them and kind of peel them off, but you know, I can't really test that. I'm getting up into the midfoot and forefoot. That is something for someone else to find out about. So coming around to the price point here in Australia, this has jumped up $20 from the previous version to $380, which I don't think is a good move at all. Is this really bringing anything new to the market? Is it really innovating and doing anything different? Not at all. This is very nearly a Vaporfly platform in 2025, and they've increased the price when nothing has really changed. It's the same PEBA foam, it's a carbon plate, it's a pretty similar midsole platform to what we've seen before. I just don't really think this is bringing anything new. $360 I think would have been a much better price point when you're sitting in and around the Endorphin Pro 4, the Wave Rebellion Pro Low. You're somewhat in touch with something like a Deviate Nitro Elite 3, which is absolutely ripping this apart right now at $320, $330. $380, this just doesn't have the guts to play with the big dogs like the Alpha Fly 3, the Cloud Boom Strike, and some of those other high-end models. Sure, most brands are bumping up their price points. I don't think New Balance have the right to do it at the moment with the state of their running lineup. That's really disappointing for me. This is a shoe that I would only pick up on discount. $380, I think most people should just go for the Deviate Nitro Elite 3. Getting into some comparisons here, I guess we'll start with the Deviate. The Deviate has a very, very similar midsole platform with a bit more width through the heel. Aliphatic TPU foam is a bit more punchy, a bit more light and airy. It's got about 10 grams lighter than this shoe. I think it turns over with a bit more punch, a bit more pop, and it doesn't really feel any less stable. The uppers are nearly identical, I've noticed, maybe with a bit less padding in the heel of the Puma, and I find that the grip is just as good. So $320, honestly, I think that you could go for that pretty much 9 times out of 10, unless you like a little bit more softness and maybe you want a bit more structure through the heel counter. Rocket X3 is another good comparison. Both have pretty simple PEBA foam platforms. Rocket X3 is more stable with more of a broad base, a bit more of a straight last, a bit more of a kind of purposeful rocker, I would say, which starts a bit further back in the shoe, a bit more of a kind of leverage off the front, whereas this is a bit more of a kind of late stage snap. I personally probably prefer the Rocket X3 for my more kind of extended rhythmic sessions, whereas I do feel like I can turn over with a bit more kind of ground feel in the SC Elite V5 weirdly. Even though it is softer, I do think that the forefoot geometry just allows me to kind of snap down into the road a little bit quicker. I think that the fit on the Rocket X3 is a bit more snug, so perhaps the SC could work a little bit better for some people. Both are around $380, $390, so they're both overpriced. So yeah, similar value for both. Bit more stability, go the Rocket X3. If you want a slightly roomier fit, go for the SC. Better grip in the SC as well. So yeah, for me, they're pretty matched. Vaporfly 4 looks quite similar on paper with a pretty similar geometry, Peber foam. In practice, they are very different. This is softer, smoother, more protective underfoot, whereas the Vaporfly feels a lot firmer, a lot snappier, a lot more road feel, especially through the forefoot, more of a kind of snappy turnover, whereas you do get more of a kind of plunge down into the foam up in the forefoot here. This is more of a kind of half marathon racing shoe, whereas the Vaporfly is much more aggressive, 5, 10. Half marathon is where they would kind of battle it out. I think if I was going for a faster race, the Vaporfly would win every day of the week, but if I wanted to stay more cushioned, the SC Elite would be the pick for me. $360, I believe, for the Vaporfly now, I still think is overpriced, but it is probably better value than the SC Elite, I would say. At least the Vaporfly is kind of trimming things down, keeping things light, whereas this just kind of feels like more of a kind of, you know, friendly, unserious racing shoe, honestly. And yeah, bringing that all together, the New Balance SC Elite V5 is a good step in the right direction, more aggressive, lighter, faster. It's finally, I would say, competitive with a few super shoes out there, but it's certainly not front pack performance. This is definitely a B+ super shoe if you ask me. I do still think there's a lot of work to do with this shoe and the rest of the lineup to kind of stay in the game for New Balance. If you ask me, the changes that need to happen here is that we just need to ditch this kind of more accommodating philosophy that they're sticking with. You just need to make the SC Trainer a better shoe, give that a good foam, give that a lighter weight, and then people can use that as their more kind of friendly, approachable racer, while this should be dropping weight, should be using a new foam technology, and actually getting up into that kind of front end of the market. I think it's decent, I think it's the right move, but it doesn't feel as serious as it probably needs to be. I do still think there is work to be done.